Hello, everyone. So I was a bit surprised. Video already finished. So hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. Hello, Roland.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
We are live again, and this is the 5th time already. So I'm really proud of that. So this is the 5th episode of our Retail Talks. Every second Tuesday at 3 p.m., we are going live on 3 different platforms. It's YouTube, it's of course Facebook, and of course LinkedIn. By the way, this live session is recorded as well. So if you want to see something again, or if you want to ask us some questions later, don't worry, just go on YouTube channel and download and stream or watch again whatever you want. Same on the LinkedIn, of course, and same on the Facebook as well. By the way, beside those video streams that we are recording, we have also podcast on all major platforms, like, for example, Spotify, Apple, or Google, or whatever, called also Retail Talks. And we are publishing those podcasts every second Tuesday as well. So if you want to enjoy these sessions during your gym sessions, maybe, or during your running, don't worry, just find it as a Retail Talk on any of those platforms and enjoy it. Next session, and I want to announce it now, will be on 7th of December. And I'm very, very, very happy and glad about that session because it will be with new guest, and this will be our marketing colleague, Milica. We will talk about trends in retail in 2022. And we will have actually 2 parts. One is more marketing related, and this is what Milica will cover. She will talk about trends that we see that there will be in the next year, or we are expecting that they will be there. And we will talk about the technical aspects of those trends, and this will cover Roland, of course. So that we will be able to talk about marketing and technical aspects of the future trends like we see them for the next year. But today we are talking about beautiful country, France, and about very complex fiscal law over there. What does it mean and why it's so complex? Why we think that this is one of the most complex fiscal countries in the world? You will find out during this session for sure. But on the beginning, let me first give you some points about us as a company, and then we will introduce ourselves, and then we will step into the details about certification and fiscal law in that beautiful country called France. So we are in front of the company called Fiscal Solutions. We are focused on the fiscal solutions around the world. Today, we are covering 17 countries, and our plans are, of course, to cover all fiscal countries which are existing in the world. I think there are around 50 or something like that. I think you know this a little bit better, Roland. Am I right? 50 countries are fiscal in the world?
Yes, it's around 50.
So it's quite a lot if we consider that there are, I think, 200 and something countries in the world. So as of today, 1/4 of the world is fiscal. So this means this topic is very, very important. And there is definitely a trend that even more countries will become fiscal as well. Our company started 18 years ago. And our first product that we developed was one fiscal report for very famous customer, very famous retailer called Carrefour for France, and it was for Romania. But after that, we developed lots of drivers for the fiscal printer, and even today we are developing own middleware solution. If we are talking about the products, we have actually just 4 products, so it's very simple and very fast to explain. One is very interesting and I think very important online library of different documents and fiscal requirements that all retailers and every POS software provider needs. So you can simply subscribe for the country and get all the needed, in English, of course, information that you have to have if you want to operate in that country or to develop your solution or to know simply what has to be done. Then we have a kind of workshops where you as a retailer or as a POS software provider can talk to us directly in the sessions one-on-one. Those sessions are done with 2 consultants of our people, our colleagues. So it means it's 1-on-2, not 1-on-1. So this means we are providing one legal consultants and one technical consultants. And those guys are talking to you about your requirements, your environment, and so on in combination with target country. The third product, and this is our software product, of course, it's a middleware that we are developing. We have the solution developed for 17 countries. You need just to integrate once, and suddenly, like magic, you have solved all your fiscal, to be honest, not of course all, but lots of, let's call it like that, lots of fiscal problems in many different countries. Unfortunately, fiscalization is very complex and it's sometimes going very deep into the business process. So this means there is nobody who can take it totally away from you and implement it totally separately. I'm sorry, but it's not possible. So there is always something that you will be forced, let's call it like that, to do. And the fourth product that we have, we are calling it Fiscal Help Desk or Fiscal Hotline. And this is, let's say, a major point for any kind of help, even legal help, and of course technical help that you maybe need during your operation in that fiscal country that you are targeting. It's from my point of view, very unique service because usually there are not that many companies which are taking the responsibility, let's say, even for the fiscal data, not just for the functionalities and for the integration, but also for the fiscal data. And that's what we are doing as a part of that help desk, of that hotline. Okay, so that's it about the company. Let us give you some words about ourselves. Roland, may I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. I'm Roland.
Very short,
Nice.
on the point. That's
Yes.
good.
Yes. My name is Roland 𝐑𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥 and I'm sitting in Novi Sad. And I can say that I'm in IT world since many years. So I just today take a look in calendar and realize that this Friday, so not next this Friday, it will be exactly 35 years ago.
Wow.
When I received my first personal, it's not a personal, it's a home computer. The date was 26th of November, 1986.
Which one was that?
Commodore 64 home computer.
I had it too. Very good.
Yeah. So it was a really a lot of time ago, yeah. And he served me for the next 4 or 5 years, and then I switched to Intel 386 Intel processor. And what is also interesting, that this processor was almost a little bit even more 20 years in production. So I was surprised because I spent 5 minutes, I look to the Commodore and then I look to the PC because I know what was my next PC. So, and then I concluded, I was happy to conclude that I'm really senior. If I want to apply for a job, I can say I'm senior because my first computer was about 35 years ago.
Wow, not bad. So I will tell you something about that as well during my introduction. So I'm Darko. Nice to meet you all again. I'm as well engineer, and my first computer was Commodore 64 as well. But I can promise you something. Next time, on our next live session, I will bring my first computer here and I will put it on the table. Unfortunately, I cannot turn it on because I don't have a display. Maybe I can do something, I will check, but I will, the major unit, and this was the keyboard actually, so the complete computer was within the keyboard, I will bring next time and put it here on the table. Okay?
Yeah, this is good. I'm sold mine. And I bought electric guitar. It was
great.
But I realized playing with computer it's better job than playing guitar, at least for me.
So, but for our audience, don't worry. Don't play music this time, but we will talk about computers and not about C64. We will talk about fiscalization and, of course, cash registers. So maybe I can step into the subject. Let's talk about fiscalization and fiscal law in France. So let me first give you just a short overview, and then we will go deep into detail. because Roland was involved in several different integrations of that country, so he knows quite good all the details. If you have any questions, even related to the C64, just put it in the comment. We will be happy to answer them. Okay, so French fiscal law is basically software fiscal law, or we call it software-based fiscal law, because all requirements that the law is requiring are related to the software, or can be implemented and have to be actually implemented by the software. If I'm talking about the software, I'm majorly talking about the POS solution. But of course, if you are designing your fiscal solution for France, you can decide if you want to put and implement these requirements within your POS solution, or maybe you can implement them, or you want to implement them outside the POS solution. As French law is very specific, I think lots of functionalities can be easily implemented outside the POS solution, and even some of them have to be on the centralized level. And this is one of the big complexities of the fiscal law, because some of the functions that you have to implement are more related to the centralized approach, let's say. If we are talking, for example, about some kind of counters, which are related to each and every POS, in case that those counters have to be continued, for example, if the POS system is broken, then it makes sense to keep them somewhere centrally. But there are lots of other functions which really make sense to have them on the central level, and we will talk about them. What has to be fiscalized? Of course, each and every sales-related transaction. So, and there are several different types of transactions. We will talk about them. And there are, of course, also some new transactions introduced just in that country. And we will give you an overview about that as well. And if we are talking about e-commerce, and this is something that we really like to talk as well about, e-commerce is not a part of the fiscal law unless the payment is done by cash. So, but usually, of course, the majority of e-commerce transactions are paid by some kind of payments like cards, credit cards, or I don't know, digital payments, mobile payments, whatever. So in that case, it's not part of the fiscalization. So this is very roughly overview. And of course, there is a very important point related to the certification. In many cases, and I think even in most cases, it's absolutely needed to certificate the POS solution. And this is another big complexity, and we will talk about that as well. So maybe I can ask you, Roland, to give us a short introduction of the details, or more deep details about the law in France.
If I go to more details, then I think we need to extend the live session maybe 2-3 hours. But let's say, so in France, fiscal law, there is no certified fiscal device, no online communication with tax authority, no fiscal printers, but there is still fiscalization. So it's a not celebrate yet, because it looks like simple, but it's not. It's a software-based fiscalization where the tax authority define which requirements must be implemented in the country. So there are a lot of requirements, and we can group these requirements into several categories. So I will try to group it somehow. So first, we can say most common usual requirements is a product functional requirement. So actually, there is a list of different requirements which must be implemented in France. There is also rules how they need to be implemented. For example, which data must be kept in the database, which data must be printed on the receipt, which data must be archived. So there is a complete list of this functionality. Then there is also security, which is an important element in fiscalization. In France, the cash register, France cash register must warranty the security of original data. So there is a signing of every transaction on the POS, and they are stored. When they are stored, they are also chained, so there is no chance to change this transaction and keep everything recorded well according to requirements. Then there is also a rule of inalterability. So what does it mean? So it means that the POS software must ensure and must warranty that nobody can insert some kind of transactions or events, whatever it is, into the past. So actually, you can only add a new transaction as a last event. Yeah? Then we have also definition of how the data will be backed and how data will be deleted if they are not used, how long they need to be kept in the database, and also about archiving. So in French, for example, you need to keep data 7 years. And on the end, so there is also one important and also not so easy requirements. The complete process of development and support must be documented, and there is a lot of documentation which must be prepared in order to be compliant to law. Yeah. So what do you think, Darko? So it's not a short list, yeah?
The list is quite long. So I
Yeah.
was thinking about, let's say, the next topic that we should discuss. I think we should go even more into the detail. And I think we should talk about all those which are the most important, because I think all of them have to be implemented, definitely.
Yes.
But I suppose some of them are really, let's say, topics that we should touch today, that we should talk about that. Maybe some
Yes.
kind of new receipt elements, transaction numbers, and all these things that you already mentioned a little bit, but going more into details. What do you think?
Yes, sure. So we can mention some of important element of this big list. Some of requirements exist on many PS applications, especially the modern, but some of them it's a unique. But we can name some of them in order to have a better understanding of the French fiscal law. So if you look on the fiscal receipt, there is a new element. There is first of all a software version of the fiscal receipt, which has to be printed. There is also certification number with the signature, which is printed as a hash code. Then we have a number of the item lines, which has to be printed on the bottom of the receipt. You have a special fiscal receipt number, which has to be fulfill the French legal requirements. So then we have these transaction numbers, which are defined for different type of transactions. There are several group of transactions, and each of these transactions are chained separately, and also they have a sequence which is belong to this group. Yeah. Then we have a different totalizers on the transactional level, on the end of the day level, so which are calculated in different way and has to be stored. Then also one interesting requirement is the sequencing. So all information which are stored in the database, which are fiscal relevant and financial relevant, has to be sequenced. Then we have a new transaction types. For example, in addition to end of the day, there is a end of the month and end of the year, which is not common in many soft solutions. Then we have, for example, proof of payment. So there are additional transactions which are not exist usually in other countries. Then we have some special French requirements which they call the JET. It's an event log. So event log, it's a list of the different events which captured in the system, and all these events must collect centrally and must stored somewhere, and they also must be signed in sequence and must be able on the request. Also this, for example, event log, there is a special regulation that you need to keep this and you're not allowed to delete information from this event log. So data signature is also specific because you not just sign the transactions, you also sign archives, for example, which is mandatory, and you also sign this log in the JET. So there is a lot of different functionality which has to be implemented. So I think if you try to search yourself on the internet, I think no way to find all this somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
this
if
is
you somehow, I think you need to spend some time to understand it because it's not so easy. But of course, it can be managed.
definitely, this is let's say a huge complexity that I see first to find all information that you need in order to understand what has to be developed. And even if you find original laws, the translation from the law means totally legal language into the business related language. And I mean business related, I mean retail specific processes it's very difficult. You don't need just a guy who is able to translate from one language to another. You need also skills like technical knowledge, of course, and you need somebody who knows the retail processes and what is important for them, like, for example, returns or discounts or whatever. So it's I see it as a quite complex and difficult to translate official fiscal law, in this case, French one, into the document which is enabling the software developer or retailer to work. Am I right? What do you think about that problem, let's say?
Yes, it's not so easy. And also, I just also recognize that, for example, many countries in the world which are fiscal are not English native speaker countries. So if you find some documentation, the translation, it's many scenarios, it's not, maybe not correct, but the different people and different countries are use different explanation of the same thing. So this is also add a lot of complexity.
Yeah, I think the combination of the skills, knowledge, and experience that you need in order to understand the law and to prepare the technical documentation is quite different than what we are usually used on, like a typical translator and so on. But let me please ask you some questions which were important for me, let's say, to understand. For example, let's talk about new receipt elements. I know that there are majorly two of them. It's like a fiscal label, and there was a number of the item lines. To be honest, I was really struggling with number of item lines. Can you please explain it? Because I was mixing it with something, and if you explain it, it will be totally clear what was my mistake.
Yes. So the number of the item lines, it's a number. It's how many item lines on the receipt. But first, we need to say what is the item line. Item line is a description on the receipt, which item sold, in which quantity, and which price. This is the one item line. So, for example, you can have two lines. One item line can have for example, item B, with quantity 2 and price 20, and then you have a second line. It's item C with price 100. And then you have two item lines, and you need to express on the bottom of the receipt how many item lines on the receipt.
But as I understood, the short description of the item is also allowed to put on the receipt. So I can put the item name, after that a short description, and behind that or beside that numbers like quantities and price. So this means I can have one line, one printed line, let's call it like that, one printed line with the name, and maybe two printed lines with the short description, and maybe even third line, or this would be even fourth line in that case, printed line with a discount, for example, and near to that price and quantity. So this means one item line in the understand it by the fiscal law would be actually 4 or even more printed lines, right?
It's a logical item line.
This is the point.
On the POS printer, it's the paper width, it's not so big, and then in many scenarios you will have a one item line which is break into several lines, but all this is a one item line.
To be really honest, I had a problem to understand it because I'm a quite old-fashioned guy. I remember the printers which were printed line by line, and that's why I was like in that world. So line by line means one item line means one printed line, but it's not. One item line can be n printed lines. So this is interesting. Regarding fiscal label, I know that fiscal label is, of course, something which is specifying the fiscal receipt. And there is something like a software category which has to be included in the fiscal label. What is that?
This fiscal label has three elements. The one element is a product category. So it has an ECR, cash register, or maybe a PS separated from the ERP, or complete all-in-one solution. So there is three different categories, which has to be printed and which has to be specified. And there is a certification number, which is also part of this label. And on the add up, there is some extraction of the signature. And altogether, it's a 9 letters, number letter, which in combination produce this fiscal label. And this has to be printed. And this is for sure, it's a really specific and French-specific label.
Do you mean certification number or certificate number?
Certification. So if you pass the certification, but I think you now already told that there is some certification. Yes, there is a certification. Right. Yes. And this certification number, it is given by the authorized company who will certify the software, and you put this number which is given by this certification process into the label. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We will come back to this because I see one of the biggest complexity generally, not only in France, is related to the certification. If you don't know what has to be done and how to certificate, you will be maybe even not allowed to operate in that country. So this is a very sensible topic. We will talk about that more in detail. Let me come back more to the technical things again. And I would like to just to have a small chat about unique transaction numbering, because I see this point as always an issue. I know that in France, it has to be company-wide unique. Can you give us some more ideas about that? What's behind that?
Yes, so unique numbering of transaction, it's related to numbering in sequence of every transaction, but they has to be grouped in the different transaction groups. So what does it mean? So for example, sales transaction returns are one group and they have a one sequence. Then invoices have another group, for example. Then financial related transaction has another group. So then we have in total there is 7 different groups, and each of these group has their own sequence. And also all these groups are chained separately. So actually this is like a completely 7 different transaction queue. Yeah. So it's not usual if you compare to other country, and usually on top on this you can add a standard transaction numbering, which is usually managed by the PS application. So you have a lot of different numbers in sequence. So you need to have some guides to know.
And you mentioned that this is, I think I mentioned that this is company-wide. So this means this is definitely a function that has to be somewhere in the center on the central level, right?
No, it's not company-wide. It's a PS on the Fiscal level. Yes.
Okay, this is making it a little bit easier then.
Yes.
Okay, because otherwise it will be a big issue.
The problem is always if it's company-wide, then it's a problem offline mode, because if you have a two cash register offline, then you cannot manage the sequencing because you will have a double sequences.
Right. Yes. Okay, good. This is already very, very complex. I think I'm already going to the right direction. Let's talk about the database, because this is another big issue, another big complexity as I see it. You mentioned the sequencing of the database, each and every entry. Can you explain this a little bit more in detail, please?
Yes. So this database sequencing, it's one of the, I can say, the big challenge if we come to the to name the challenges. Why? So it's not a big itself. It's not a big requirement. So actually, it's required to all financial data and fiscal relevant data which is stored in the database to be sequenced in the database. So during the certification process, they will check you have all these sequences. And why this is a challenge? It is challenge because if you have a software which is running in multiple countries, then this change, which is French specific change, may have an influence also in other countries. So actually, for example, any kind of change in the database, which usually it's the same, usually the cash register application uses the same database in different countries, and they are then integrated from country to country, but not change the database structure itself. You need to extend maybe some tables in the database, and this can have also impact in other countries. So this change can have an impact in many countries if you're an international software supplier, and you can imagine how big QA effort then you need to perform if you make a change which has influence not just in France, but in other countries.
I think if we have somebody in our audience coming from the OMG arts and all those nowadays and historical, let's say, groups, I think they will know more than all of us how difficult it was to define the universal data model, let's say, in retail. It's so big topic. So if you are coming, if you have experiences with data model, please just comment around what do you think about that, because I think that changing the data, first defining the data model is very difficult issue in retail, because you have to map all the processes with data model and other way around. And then to change it, and even if you're not changing it, but just let's say making it bigger, it's causing a lot of problems. What do you think about changing the existing data models? I think it's a big issue, right?
It's a big issue and can be a big pain. So nobody like it. So it's a good approach is then to have a special database or somehow to not change the core database, because I think it's too much effort. Yeah.
Help me, please. What is the name of the data model? I think it was related to the XML structure first.
It's a PostLog. It's a PostLog.
PostLog, right? Thank you very much. I was not able to remember it. It's a really big thing. Yeah. So as I remember, so as a definition, it was huge.
Yes, it's a big and huge, and it's a lot of definitions. And so if you implement database structure like that, then it can be really a big problem. Yeah.
Let us summarize the challenges. So what are the, let's say, top 5 or top 3 or top 7, however you like?
Yes, we already told this one. So this database change, which is on first look, it's not looks so big, but if you go and dig a little bit more, then it's a really big challenge. Then also we can say the challenge is to implement a lot of functionality, which is usually doesn't have any sense to do retail business, which will be used by retailer. This functionality exists only to fulfill the French requirements. Then we can say the challenge is to maintain all this documentation, which has to be prepared for certification. Then also you need to also implement these additional features like a backup procedures, archive procedures. And the last one, you told 5, so I found 5. So the last one will be the certification. So the certification process and a recertification process. So this is also the challenge, because you first of all you need to spend some time. Then it's a cost. And then you need to put the effort, and then this is something that you need to also maintain in France, because there is a yearly recertification. So it keeps you always in the work.
Let's talk about that, because I think from all those requirements that you just mentioned, I think the 5th one, the certification, is probably the biggest one, because it's more or less not that transparent like we should or we want to have. Maybe you can give us more details about the certification.
Yes, and end up we can say it's the biggest one, because you cannot pass if you fulfill the before 4. So actually,
right. So it's the last one.
Include all these 4. So actually, it's the biggest one, because it's a cumulative. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but we have also interesting scenario in French. Why? Because there is a 2 approach of certification. There is a one type, and first one, it's to say it. They call it a self-certification. So actually, in this scenario, there is no certification. So it looks easy, but it's not so easy. In this scenario, cash register solution provider takes responsibility to be compliant to the French fiscal law, and actually he declare his software as a self-certified. If you have a self-certified software, then most probably, if you have some audit, it will be more checked by the tax authority, because nobody checked your system, and then the result can depend on the tax inspector. Another scenario where what we can have, it's a certification by authorized company. This is also unique if you compare to other countries. In French, the certification process is not done by tax authority itself. They actually authorized 2 different companies in France which perform this fiscalization. The one of this company, it's a LNE, it's a National Laboratory of Metrology and Technology for testing. And the second one, it's InfoCert. This is a company which is member of some AFNOR association, which is responsible for different standardization in different area, and InfoCert is actually specialized for the certification of in IT process and IT software development. And one of certification which they perform is this NF525 certification for fiscal regulation. And this is also the certification process where we have experience, and we passed already with other companies more. I think I don't know how many, but you know maybe better. It's a lot of certification process, and we already know what this process and how this process is going and what are the steps actually of this process. But if you want, I can explain the process. I think
a little bit. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
I think this is very interesting for our audience. Yes.
Yes. So in order to be certified, first of all, you need to apply for certification. This is quite logical step. So first process is application, but what you need to calculate is that you need to at least few months, most probably 3 months in advance when you plan to obtain certification. You need to apply for it. Then the next step is, of course, the good preparation. In order to be well prepared for certification, first of all, you must implement all these functional requirements. You will get some document from the InfoCert which have a exact specification, but I think if you read it first time, you will not understand a lot of topics, so you need to spend some time to understand it. Then you need to, when we go to the certification process itself, you need to prepare the test environment and test it before go to certification, because you will not have so much time to play with the system when the certification process starts. Then you need to prepare documentation. As far as I remember, there is 22 different documents which has to be prepared, which is cover the process of development, support, application, product, user manual, etc. And all these functionalities which is implemented with this documentation are then shown to the auditor. So when the audit day comes, there is also several steps in this auditing process. First of all, there is I can say, introduction to the system. The auditor has some questionnaire, already prepared questionnaire, and they will pass this questionnaire to ask different questions in order to understand the system which is subject, has to be certified. After this introduction, the solution supplier must generate and prepare some transaction which are used in by system. By preparing this transaction, they will need to print them and send them, because today, in the past, it was on-site certification, and today, due to COVID, in the last 2 years, they are already in many scenarios remote certification. So you need to upload this picture of the transaction and information to the auditor. Then auditor will check these receipts. It will check the report in the system. They will ask to check also a database, trying to search this database to see the sequencing. So you need to present database structure also and the data in the database and other functionality. After deep digging into the system, the auditor will create a review. He will also check uploaded documentation about the product and processes, and they will complete all this as a result of the auditing process. With this, auditing process will be not finished. This process usually takes 2 days. He will bring all this information to some InfoCert committee. Usually it's a 2 weeks takes. They will check all these documentation reports, and they will then make a decision about certification. So you can pass certification or you can fail. So, and also there is a 2 option. If you pass, you can pass completely, or you can pass but with some pre-requirements that, for example, if they are minor not compliance, you need to in meantime implement, and you need to show these changes or may not. It's depend of the how the big the correction for that it's required. But these are the different options. On the end up, if you're lucky and you are good prepared, you will get the certification, and then you can take this 4-digit number and put your system and make a first fiscal receipt. So what do you think?
Sounds complex, and I'm really happy that we are recording this session, because whoever wants to analyze this, what you just explained, can just check and take the recording, and he will immediately be able to understand all those steps again. If there are questions, please do not hesitate, contact us. Before I step in a little bit more to talk about certification and how we can help, I would just like to read one comment from Nicholas. Thank you, Nicholas, for that. He is writing, mapping POSLog to your business model is pain in the ass. Adding fiscality is ... Yes, so this is so good, really good. We've done this game to map the POSLog to the business model several times, and you are so right. Thank you for that comment. Coming back to the certification topics and how we can help. We as a company run already, I don't know how many different certifications in many different countries. And each time as we were forced to run it, we done it again and again from the scratch. And then we understood, let's make something like a common model. Let's define something like a common steps that everybody has to run in all those countries. And let's try to define kind of, let's say, universal process which can lead you through all those certifications. And we done that. We are calling it IFCM, International Fiscal Certification Management. So it's a basically project management methodology, how to run all those certifications in different countries. And what is the best on that tool is that we included lots of checklists and lots of how-tos and best practices and test cases and all of these things that you need in order to run this kind of certification easily, let's say, and to be more transparent and better prepared for them. So if you want help about that, please do not hesitate, contact us, and we will provide you, of course, with details about that. Okay, so let us come slowly to the finalizing these sessions. First, let me tell you that if you want to make your POS certification or your POS ready for, thanks, Nicholas. If you want to make your POS solutions ready for France, what would be the steps that we recommend, let's say? So first, I think it's very important, and Roland mentioned that, to have the needed information, to have the original law, of course, and to have the business-related and retail-related specifications. That's what you can find on our portal. Feel free if you want to join the portal, to subscribe, and you can download all the documents. If you are able to program and develop your solution based on these documents, fine. If not, don't worry. We are there to run a kind of workshop with you, to explain you all details. And then you are ready, let's say, to decide if you want to develop by yourself, or maybe, and this is what I would recommend, maybe it's better for you to include our middleware in your solution, because our middleware is already implementing all those database changes, which are on the centralized level. You don't need to touch your business model because we done it for you, let's say. You just need to interface. All those reportings, all those backups, and all those different scenarios and transactions we already implemented. You just give us, let's say, the XML-based file transaction, and we do the rest. So think about that if you have to run the fiscalization in France. If you want more questions, don't worry, just ask us. So finally, at the end, let me recommend you some of the events that are following very soon. First, on the 7th of December, so it means in 2 weeks, we will talk about trends in retail that we see at least.
Just wait, with Commodore 64.
That's what I promised. Yes.
Yes. These are the trends, yeah.
I will not forget. My promise was to bring the C64 on the table and to show to everyone, because I think the young audience never saw it. So I will bring it. I have it somewhere.
These are the retail trends, yes.
We will talk about retail trends, yes. We will have a Milica as a guest, so please enjoy that in 2 weeks. Then I can recommend you to subscribe on our YouTube channel. Just today, we published a video related to the fiscalization in France as well. So today, our day is, let's say, France-minded. So everything is under the sign of France. Go there, check the video. We are talking about 4 main fiscal requirements, and some of them we discussed over here, but there is a little bit more details about all of them. Just feel free to check it. And of course, I want to invite you to our next free webinar. It's on the 1st of December, and we will talk about online fiscalization in Hungary. Changes are coming. Like winter is coming, but no changes are coming. So stay tuned. Thank you very much for joining us. If you want to contact us and to ask us whatever you like, please use the social networks or our Twitter accounts or whatever. XZD. I don't know what is XZD. I never heard about that computer. Is it older than C64 or it's younger? Came after that or? Unfortunately, and this one I know, Matralis. This is, I think, yeah, almost the same age like C64. So guys, now we will talk about the history. Let's do this in the next. Just let me check. Like, anybody remembers the difference between hard and soft sector disks? Come on, I learned about the cards with the holes inside. But I cannot bring it to the table next time. I don't have it anymore. Yes, this is a vintage pour. Guys, let's take this subject. Let's talk about all the systems, all the retail systems as well, because maybe somebody remembers SNI, Siemens Nixdorf computers, Beatles, let's say. We do. We worked on them. Maybe we can talk about them as well. Let's do this on the 7th of December. You are invited to join us, and stay healthy, and see you next time.
See you next time.